Council meeting, we'll have a call to order with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Oliphant. Present. Hush.
Here.
Gale.
Here.
Delaney.
Here. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Gale,
Second.
second by Hush. All in favor?
Aye.
At this point, we'll have public comment. You have a limit of 3 minutes per person on agenda items and local government issues. Get up there.
Good evening, Council, and also citizens. My name is Ann McDonough. I live in Asbury, but I'm here tonight wearing a couple hats. I'm also a Dubuque County Supervisor. It always makes me, I've been before you before years ago, but it makes me a little nervous because this isn't my lane, as you all know. It's your city, it's your government, right? So let me just say what I need to say and move on. One, a report about the ARPA funds. We did receive a claim for about $337,000, and that will be processed and paid by the end of this month from the federal $1 million allocation from the county supervisors. And then everything looks good, all looks great, auditor's pleased, so it's just paperwork processing. But there's several other payments there that we'll need to go through the audit, and obviously there's some technical things that we want to make sure we get right so that there's nobody overlooking your shoulders on that ARPA money, because not only do they look at you, but they look at the whole county. We're all responsible for those funds that go out. And then second, and I'm not sure why the room's full, but yay, I wanted to share good news about the library. So Lisa, your city administrator, has been working with me for months on the McDonough grant. And we met Friday, and I'm just here to share good news, a pot of money. The $20,000 request was approved.
Thank you.
So, quite exciting. So really, just gratitude to you, Mr. Mayor, to the council for dreaming this dream and making it happen. And Lisa, I just have to say, you have stayed in tremendous contact with me, always looking for that next opportunity. And our last grant to the library was only $3,000. So the $20,000, I don't think you and I thought it could be possible. So I was quite excited when that happened. But thank you, everyone. I hope I haven't gone over my time. Have a
Thanks,
great
Ann.
meeting.
Thank you.
Ann.
Hi, good evening. Clay Gavin, 616 First Avenue West. I rise tonight in support of agenda item 17. I'm a member of the Board of Adjustment, and as you have mentioned to the council previously, is that since we lost one of our valued members back in April, we have been operating with a 4-person board. And as you all know, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, how awkward that can be sometimes, but in particular with the Board of Adjustment, we need four concurrent affirmative votes to pass almost anything. And so we are at our limit, have been for 4 months now. We have a meeting Wednesday night. As I understand it, there was this opening was advertised sometimes after Mr. McDermott's death, and there was a time when there wasn't anyone who volunteered, but my understanding is now we have a very qualified, very excellent person who has come forward to fill that opening, and I would encourage you to do it. And one of the reasons I'm here is that yesterday I was privy to a series of emails between the city administrator and our chair, where it was going to be recommended tonight that this decision be put off for 2 more weeks to allow more time for other people. I don't see the point in that. It has been open for a long time. People were aware of it, or could have been aware of it, for that whole time. And we now have someone who has come forward, a very excellent candidate, who's come forward, which we would like to see, I would like to see, and my conversation with the chair of the board would like to see this person appointed tonight, so we'd have a full board going forward to our meeting on Wednesday. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll hang around if there are any questions that come up during that agenda item, but I wanted to address that before you started considering. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Darren Modernach. I appreciate the 30 minutes that I'm given. First of all, I'm Darren Modernock, former owner of Dagwood's Pub, Dagwood's Lawn Service, and still business or building owner in downtown Cascade. Been here, lived here pretty much all my life. Moved back in '99. I'm here because I'm on the park board, and I got some very upsetting news that Kathy was leaving. She had put her 2 weeks' notice, and Kathy's a dear friend of mine. I've known her a long time, so I wanted to come and thank her for her service and for what she has done as a city clerk for Cascade. But it also brings up the grief of the people that we're losing in the administration here in Cascade. And it bothers me. And we have a full room here tonight that I think it also bothers. We have seats that are up for council. So I think as a council and the council need to take a deep look at why we're losing these very valuable people in Cascade. Seriously, we need to take a look at it because we can't lose any more. And there's rumblings of more leaving. And that breaks my heart. So I really think that the council, the city needs to take a look at it. I'm very proud of our city and everything that we have done in this town since I moved back in '99. The city has had ups and downs, and we've rolled through it. The city has gone through huge success, and they've saw some grief. But unfortunately, in my time since I moved back in '99, I've never heard so much turmoil and so much grief and so much depression about what is going on. And there's a reason for that here tonight with everybody here. And it breaks my heart. It really does. I love Cascade. So I am here for you guys to please take a look at what is going on. And stay in your lane. We have boards, we have councils, we have several groups that are here tonight. We have, you voted on it. You voted on us to become a part of your city, to become a board. And to make this happen, to make this community what people want to come here to live for. Let us do that. Let us stay in our lane. Let's get along. Let's make people happy. There are people that did not want to come to this meeting tonight because they were afraid. They were afraid of the repercussions that was going to happen. That is a shame. That is a complete shame that they can't even come just to voice their opinion. It breaks my heart again. So that is why I'm here tonight. Again, Kathy, thank you. Toots, you've done a great job. You really have. Yeah, you really have. Caroline, where's Caroline? You know, we lost our chamber director here not too long ago, left. Caroline, we couldn't have a better chamber director to step up to the plate. You know, I've known you, you do great. You're a business owner downtown, we appreciate you. So thank you very much. So again, there's people in this room here tonight because they care about our city. You know, we don't have to do anything drastic, but we need to figure it out. We need to have people quit leaving, and we need to get along. We need to stay in our lane. We need to work together. We need to be very transparent in every board, and every council, and everything that has to do with this city of Cascade. I'm on the park board. I am on the Cascade Hometown Days Committee, and I'm very proud to be it. You know, there's also grief about people that are volunteering and donating their time and money without approval. My gosh, look at all the things that we have done. Look around the room that people have done without having to ask permission to go and donate their time. I was floored when I heard that. I know there's no comment on it, but if you want to know the comment, reach out to me later, and I can tell you what that comment is. The minute we get questioned about the volunteer work that we do in this town that needs approval, that's when we lose all that. I don't ever want to quit donating my time to this community because I love this community. And I think everybody else does, and the people that are here tonight are here to show that very same reason. I cut it short, Chad.
Anybody else?
Can't believe there's nobody else. It's gone way while. Boy, start with something different. I own the meat locker downtown. I own a business there since 2010. It's been incorporated to this town. It's probably your biggest exporter from the downtown. And it was regarded as vacant and called vacant by this council, excepting you, Chad. I'll accept you from basically everything that's said around. All right. So it's been a really rough town to live in for the last 3 years. It goes before the last hire, but, I mean, even the last week. If you own a property on the river, it used to be accessible to the river. The property lines go towards the river. And if someone were to like come and cut down plants on my property, if someone were to come to your yards and cut down plants on your property, you'd be mad, right? Like, well, that's what's happened just last week and in history. At least one other time, probably two, over the last few years. And it's like, it's the arrogance of it. Like, we own it, it's ours. The property line on my property goes closer to the river, over the flood wall, because my property predates the flood wall. And someone in the last few days, and I reported it to Officer Hahn today, reported it today, and I'm not sure who did it, but if the city authorized it, or if someone up here did it, and I know, Mr. Mayor, you cut it, and on my property.
I wasn't aware of that.
But you like run the historic office, you're in there as like your own office, you should be able to read property lines.
I just thought it looked nice.
Okay, if you think something in my yard looks nice, please don't cut it. Or if you think it looks nice cut down, don't cut it. And for the rest of us, we can even agree, if we have plants growing in our yard, we don't care what he thinks looks nice. Is that agreeable? I mean, right? We don't want him to suddenly come to our yard and cut down our plants. All right, so I know this meeting is about other things, and I have other things. I've been accused 12 counts of nuisance on 2 buildings downtown, sent to 1 envelope to there to get it. 2 buildings downtown, 12 counts of nuisance. 2 of them were vacancy and properties that I am occupying, and their little assessment here talks about absentee owners. I'm not an absentee owner. I roofed those damn things. This council has gotten out of hand. It has been a bully society for a couple of years now. Not even addressing what my major issue is, the grant applications and the way they have gone, where you abandon good buildings to go off Main Street with Main Street grants. Within these accusations, the first time I'm even telling it officially, there are pictures of buildings that are not mine. That's not competent. You don't get to accuse me of vacancy and threaten me of $250 per day fine, $90,000 a month in fines threatened in here. And some of those accusations are not my property. And the vacancy is absolutely ridiculous. I have run an incorporated business out of the meat locker since 2010. I have rented the upstairs continuously, and you accuse me of vacancy with a threat of $250 a day fine? That's your incompetence. Everything else going up here, again, exempted, and exempted, sorry, is terrible. It's awful, but just sheer competence. Threatened me with $250 a day fine for multiple violations that are not even my property. They are neighboring property. Buildings attached together. Some of them are not yours. Anyway, that's all I can probably handle. God bless y'all. I really do love y'all. You're all great. I love y'all too. I prayed for you because the Bible makes me do it. God bless you.
Thank you.
Iowa nice. Cascade nice. I moved here in 1978. Talked to a gentleman the other day that had been a mayor sitting right here. Said he moved back to Cascade because Cascade was nice. Kathy is a very nice person. I feel honored to have worked with your kids. Haven't felt that Cascade was always nice, and I think Darren said it well. We better take a look in the mirror and be Cascade nice. The controversy is not helping anyone.
Thanks, John.
Excuse me, I'm Barb Gross, Chairman of the Utilities Board, and I've been just sitting back, watching and listening, and enough is enough. We've lost some very good employees for the city. Cascade is a very nice town. I'm proud to be here. I wasn't born and raised here, but I'm here. And I think most of the people here are very, very nice, and we help each other out. And I just want the town to come together, and David said it so well. Kudos to you. I totally agree. We need to figure out what the issue is, what's the problem. Let's work together and help each other out. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Anybody? Nobody? Seeing none, I go to the consent agenda. Minutes, City Council 7/22/24, Park Board 7/1/24, and 8/5/24. August 12, 2024 claims, and July 2024 financial reports. Annual liquor renewal, Casey's General Store, number 77. Is there any concerns about the consent agenda? Seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Delaney,
I'll second.
second by Gale. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 7, presentations from city council candidates. Mark,
You bet.
you're up.
Hi, I'm Mark Weber. I'm seeking for the empty spot in city council. I've been living here all my life. I ran Weber Construction I was a part of Weber Construction for 30 years, ran it probably 25, and currently work for Twitch Construction. You guys have all that stuff. I'd be honored to sit in that spot right there. Louder. I'll deal with you later. Yeah, there. So, I don't know what else you need.
Thanks, Mark.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is your vision for Cascade for the next 5 years? Where do you see Cascade in 5 years?
Getting infrastructure straightened out, better roads, financials, getting us on the right track. Try to get us on the right track.
Thank you.
Help get us on the right track.
Thanks, Mark. Dave?
I'm Dave Gunkoff. I was on the zoning board back in '99, and then I sat on the council seats there from 2000 to 2005. And you asked a good question, because those are some of the things that the 20-year plan is something that we looked at back in that period of time, and it's something that is important to the community. But here in the comments, the recent comments, it sounds like there's some other work that needs to be addressed in trying to do retention and support of our community. So I'm looking forward if you pick me for the challenge. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dave. Thanks, Dave. Eric?
Eric?
Hello, I'm Eric Honda. I've lived in Cascade for 6 or 7 years now. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, so I'm not native to Iowa, but I've now been out in Iowa longer than I was in Washington, so I think I've become an Iowan now. Would like to be on the board or like to be on the council. I have a feeling, I volunteer in this community with the wrestling team. My wife's coach in this community too. We have kids that are growing up in this community, and there's just stuff that I would like to see change in this community. So I think in my letter I specifically stated about public service. I am in the public service industry. I would love to see us have a third full-time police officer, so we actually have full coverage, or close to full coverage. I'd like to see our EMS fully or more staffed. like to see our fire departments getting more people in it. You know, when you call 911, it would be nice to have someone actually show up. Any questions?
What's one of your favorite things about living in Cascade?
Just the community aspect of it. I grew up in a larger city. It's nice to be able to walk out my door and not hear cars and be able to play out and play outside. I don't know if most people know where I live, and we're pretty much outside our house playing the whole time. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Number 8, consideration of resolution number 77-24, appointment of a city council member for the vacant term until 12/31/25. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion for Mark Weber to be appointed.
Second.
I'll second it.
Motion by Delaney, second by Gale. Roll call.
Oliphant,
Aye.
Hush,
Aye.
Gale,
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Number 9,
No,
I-
oh yeah.
Swear him in.
Just like to make a comment, obviously, the other two candidates, there's be election in 2 years, or
Yep.
in another
Yep.
year, so
If you're still interested.
you guys are
Yeah.
more than welcome to help with city by then, so, thank you.
Hey, Mark.
swearing in of the new council member, and begin your new term.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge all the duties of the office in the city of Cascade as now or hereafter required by law?
We just brought it up on the, yeah, they need us. We can just follow up. Do you have do you give them agendas?
Oh,
He had
I
one.
have.
Just
I have a
it's
blank
easier
one.
to follow on that.
I'm a little
one.
nervous.
Here, I have one.
Here.
I have an extra.
It's just easier to stay on the paper.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you all.
Number 10, consideration of resolution number 76-24, purchase of camera system for City Hall, EMS Center, and Parks.
I think in your council packet, you had the fourth recommendation or the fourth proposal from 4 different companies, so I would defer to, I don't think that Mike he has not informed me yet, which is the recommendation, so.
So some of those, I know the last 2 that went in the packets, they were a little bit squished together, and some of them weren't sorted out so well. I'm going to move tonight to give this to the next council meeting for anybody who wants to reach out to me, ask questions about everything, but this is it. I've gone through all the numbers, I've gone through all the companies, I've ran through everybody. This is everybody that will meet, but I figure it'll give everybody from the park board and everybody on the council, if you have questions, anybody wants to email me, text me, anything like that before the next city council meeting. Is there a park board meeting between now and then? Is there?
No.
No. So if you guys all want to reach out to me, get a hold of me, text me, email me with questions. That's what I would move for. Go ahead.
Good, Mike, thank you, because for the park board, I think we need to take a look at that too. But the reason I'm up here is, what you people don't know, is Mike has spent endless hours. If you went through the packet, and if you looked on the itinerary for tonight and looked at the quotes, and he did it all on his own time. He took his hat off the city council and he put his own hat on to donate to the city. So he did all of this work on his own time. So I just wanted Mike to be recognized for that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm happy to do it.
So I need a motion to table this then?
I'll make a motion to table it to next meeting.
Motion by Gale,
Second.
second by Hush. Roll call.
We can just do all ayes, right?
Yeah.
Or just table them?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 11, consideration of ordinance number 16-24, noise ordinances, and this is the final reading.
So we have two ordinances. One further clarifies what we would define as noise. There's obviously excluded items on there, and so we try to be more clear, whereas in the past, we had a very simple statement that said anything that annoys anyone within 50 feet. So we also, ordinance 17 is just back to the original one where we take that statement out and refer back to this new code. So you've had two other readings, and this would be the final reading if approved.
Any questions? If none, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion on ordinance 16-24.
Motion by Oliphant,
I'll second it.
second by Gale. Roll call.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Number 12, consideration of ordinance number 17-24, noise nuisance, and this is the final reading.
Same, this is just to support the one referring back to the one that you just adopted.
I'll make a motion on ordinance 17-24.
Motion by Oliphant,
Second.
second by Delaney. Roll call.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Weber. Oliphant.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Number 13, consideration of resolution number 78-24, social service agreement with Cascade Area Chamber of Commerce.
As I wrote in the resolution, there's also a letter from Caroline, the new chamber director, asking for $8,000, which would be part of the budget, although it wasn't budgeted in that account because of how we were going to pay if we had the full-time joint position. But the funds are there if the council wants to go ahead and approve the resolution.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Delaney,
I'll second it.
second by Gale. Roll call.
Delaney.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Number 14, discussion and direction on city council term of office ordinance.
So we'll try to go through this. It's not exactly clear. I tried to explain it as best I could in the memo. But a resident came in a couple of weeks ago and was discussing with me the term of office for city council. And as all of you know, there's always been an assumption in Cascade that city council members are elected to a 4-year term. And what the person brought in was, if you remember, that we have an online portal called American Legal, where our ordinances are placed on there. And so when you go on that portal, there's a search bar, and oftentimes you can get yourself off the search bar and you're searching in other American legal communities. So there's times where even, like I know Brad and Fred have searched on there, and all of a sudden you're looking at something that is like, I didn't know this was our code. So I thought that's what happened. So when the person came in, I said, well, let me look into it. Because what it said that our code would be did not sound correct or didn't read correct for what we have all assumed it's been. And so when I started researching, and I want to back up how this happens, for those of you that know what a recodification is, every 5 years in the state of Iowa, you have all of an entire ordinance book. That's what your ordinance was the last time that you codified the book, so it's an entire book. And then for 5 years, you're adopting various as ordinances. So, and you know, we just adopted the noise ordinance. If we've done a zoning change, all the different things that come over the 5-year period before you're going to again recodify. And back in 2020, the city approved a number of dollars, I believe it was $6,000, to hire ECIA, which, as you know, is our COG, or our central unit of government, to assist in that process. So they do a number of things. They take your original book that was adopted 5 years, or you're usually doing it about 4 years after, and you take everything that you've done in the last 4 years. So I said, like, if you have all these ordinances and they know they need to incorporate that into the new book. They'll also, as our consultants at ECIA, let's make up something that we had, as you know, we used to have pit bulls as an outlawed dog. And let's say, this is made up, but let's say the Supreme Court or the state law said cities can no longer list breeds of dogs, and that's outlawed. So they would, on our behalf, be telling us, hey, this is something you need to change in your code when you recodify. So you're going through this whole process. ECI was here to help you. My understanding, I was obviously not here, that the ECI staff kept coming to your previous city administrator and city clerk saying, hey, can we get moving on this recodification? It was during COVID. Obviously, times were different then. People were doing different things, working from home, not working from home. From speaking to those of you that were on the council before, the city staff went back to ECIA and said that we wanted to conduct that recodification on your own, and that was something that the previous city clerk was able to do from home, and that you had City Hall closed for a number of months, and so she worked on it from home. Then in August of '21, as she was tasked with doing that task, August of '21, those of you that were on the council at that time were presented with a new book, and you were asked to approve it as you would. And you adopted it thinking that you had adopted it as is. I believe, again, from talking to people, I wasn't here, but you were given a list of like, hey, these are the 20 highlights of things that are different. And you had that list. Obviously, it would be a challenge for any individual council member to read through 300 pages that's in this new book. So usually your staff points those things out. But again, ECIA was not involved. It was kind of handled by the city clerk. So in August of '21, you adopted it. And somewhere around that time, a few months later, ECIA came forward and said, hey, are you able to provide us with the adopting documentation so that we can put it in our file? And at the time, your city staff sent that documentation to ECIA, who said you did not adopt it legally. And again, because ordinances have to be adopted by ordinances, you had adopted it by resolution. And a resolution is a lower form of approval than an ordinance. And so you cannot adopt an ordinance book by resolution. And so ECIA directed you to redo it. And you did that in January of 2022. So the book that we have on file right now was adopted in 2022, January. Where this comes into play is that in some ways, thankfully, it was adopted incorrectly because those of you that were elected, which would be Mike, Megan, Riley's position that's now filled by Mark, you were adopted in November of '21. And if that adoption had been done properly in August of '21, what you didn't know you adopted was that you changed the city code from 4-year terms of office to 2-year terms of office, and that no one knew. I know that Mike actually had the old book that was presented to the city council because he's like, well, how could this be? We didn't know that. I said, I understand you didn't know it. I don't think it was ever on the list of what was adopted, but it got put in there as a 2 instead of a 4. So Mike was able to go back and find the old book in his archives, had the actual book that he was presented, and found the number 2. So what that means is that if it had been adopted properly, those of you that were adopted in November of '22, not knowing, would all be invalid council members. You would not have done anything legally since November, or actually January 1, when everybody took office. And thankfully, that's the good news of that it being adopted improperly by resolution. So because your terms happened in November of '21, and the actual codification was in January of '22, thankfully, you 3 that were adopted to those 4-year terms are legally still on the city council. Fast forward to November of '23, when Bill, Shirley, and Chad were on the ballot, and the top 2 vote getters were Bill and Chad, who thought they were elected to a 4-year term, now are only elected to a 2-year term. What that then means is that all 5 elected officials, when you normally have staggered terms every 2 years, by law, half of you are on 4-year terms and the other 2 of you are on 2-year terms. And so all 5 council members, by law, must be reelected next November of 2025, because you will all expire at that time. I came to the mayor first. I then informed Chad and Bill because it affected their terms of office. I've sought legal counsel. I'm working with both county auditors as there are election ramifications of that. So now when you think about the fact that you have 2-year terms, you are only by law allowed in the state of Iowa to have local elections in the fall of odd years. And so if you were to remain with 2-year terms, your entire city council will flip potentially every time there's an election, which, in my humble opinion, is not wise, that you literally can take one day everybody's here and the next day everybody's gone. And that's typically why you wouldn't do that. So you cannot, like when I came from Wisconsin, we had 2-year terms, but there were local elections every year, so you still were always able to have half and half. But you're not, I confirmed that, you're not allowed to have elections every year for local. So the process is going to be either, well, there's no process to changing, all of you will be up in a year from now in November. The next question that we do not have a legal answer to is how, well, first of all, you have a question to answer, which is, do you want to leave it at 2-year terms and have the entire council potentially flip every year? Or if you want to go back to 4-year terms, that would be a charter ordinance change that this council can do. and then you adopt it like you do a normal ordinance, but because it's a charter ordinance, there's a potential for the public to come forward and say, hey, we think that this should be done by election. And if they submit that, then it would go to the people on a ballot. If nobody comes forward during that time frame, if you choose to go back to 4 years and nothing happens, then it becomes 4 years. So let's assume that you do that. Now, again, you all have to be reelected in November of '25. The question that remains that I'm getting kind of mixed information from, that we'll obviously have to find out before this occurs, is that there seems to be 2 ways that you could then get back to staggered terms. Because obviously, again, you're all going to be up. And if your goal of going to 4 years is to get back to 2 of you elected 1 year and 3 of you elected in the other term every 2 years, you have 2 ways that I've heard. Some people say only 1 way is legal, and that's what we're waiting. So one would be that you would say the top 5 people in that election would win, and that the top 3 vote getters from a numbers game would get the 4-year terms. You would have 3 people get a 4-year term, and 2 people get a 2-year term. Some people, again, throughout the county have said that that's legal, and I know that they've done that in Jones County, but they did it when they were going from wards to at-large. So it was like for a different reason. So that's why I don't know if it's relevant there and not relevant here. The other option that Dubuque County seems more in support of, and they are our lead county for elections, budget, everything else, is that they feel like when we have the election in a year, that you have to sign up to do a 4-year term, or you're signing up to run for a 2-year term. And then if we say there's going to be 3 for 4 years and 2 for 2 years, you would choose sign up for one or the other. The thing that seems unfortunate about that, if that is the way we have to go, is that people could win on one of the ballots with less votes than a loser on the other. You know what I mean? Like, you could be the 4th person that doesn't get on in the 4-year terms, and you could have more votes than the top winner on the 2-year. So to me, it seems most fair, but Kevin, our auditor in Dubuque, is dealing with the county. I've spoken to the county auditor in Jones County. She's the one that told me they had done the top vote getters, but again, it was for a different reason. And so we have to wait for that. So there's no action for tonight. Number 1, it's informing the public that that happened. Again, I was not part of that. Obviously, it was a staff recommendation. It's unfortunate. I've spoken to ECIA. I did find out that the template that they gave, which the intention of giving a template to your staff and to be working with your staff through ECIA is to go very meticulously through each page and determine what are we keeping in Cascade and what are we not. And as you know, we have found numerous things since I've been here that were inadvertently left out. One being, don't let your stormwater dump out less than 10 feet from the curb. The way we found that is Marty, Phil, and Ben said we have an ordinance. I said, no, we don't. Yes, we do. No, we don't. You found it in the things that were supposed to get codified. And so we've done our best at legal counsel's advice that as we find something that was not correct, that we bring it to you and you decide if you want to go back to what you thought it was or whatever. This is obviously a lot more serious than some of the small things like where your stormwater discharges. So the number 1 thing, we can certainly talk about it because it's on the agenda. If people have an opinion, I'm obviously not going to have anybody drafting an ordinance until you give us direction on whether you want to leave it at 2 and flip every 2 years. Or if you would like our legal counsel to draft an ordinance for 4 years, and then if we're going in the direction of 4 years, then obviously we need to get a final legal opinion on how we're going to get that back to being staggered in one of those 2 scenarios.
Personally, it's kind of wild saying this because when I got on, I was the newest, and everybody else had so much tenure on the council, and now I'm one of the more tenured people on the council. But this role should be 4 years. Like, it takes a solid, my experience is taking me a solid 2 years to understand the budget, and even then I don't feel like I understand it all that great. Like, there's a lot, I think, that, and understanding the stuff that the city guys do, some of the work that they do and things like that, I think it is a 4-year term.
I agree. And there's no way, since we're already in that pattern now when we redo the election, that we can't just, whoever, when we go to the next election, be a 2-year when it comes out, because like Gail and they're already going to have their 2, you know what I'm saying, and then they would have 2 more to go for their 4, right?
They have to get reelected though because they were
yeah,
legally.
I mean, I get that they would have to go through the election, but I'm just saying the seats it would be.
But you're you're no longer. That's the problem. The 3 of you were elected in '21, so you're all up in
Right,
'25.
in
So you all
25,
would be
right.
up. So what do you mean?
Oh, I feel like I understand what you're saying. So
So-
like, because their term should have been a 4-year term, so they would run for the 2 years, so that finishes out their 4-year,
Right,
which
and
should have
puts
been
them
their
back
4.
on track with where the, so like my seat, Megan's seat, and your seat would go up for election. They'd be the 4-year seats in this coming election in '25. But the other two, because they're finishing out their 2-year, would be
So I think,
2-year term.
so if they say that
They'd be
we.
a 4-year term, but they'd be getting elected for 2 years.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
But I think if they say we have to pick, like that you have to run for one or the other, then I think if Bill was like, well, I want to run for 4, that makes him really 6 or more than that, because he was obviously on before that. I don't think you can restrict, my gut feeling would
see
be.
what you're saying.
You can't say like, you two have to run for the 2. Because if they want to run for the 4, to not have to do it again in 2, because now they've now had to do it 3 times in a 6-year instead
I'll
of.
leave that to the,
Yeah. Again, I don't know, like,
let them figure that out.
in Dubuque County, they
Sure,
are
good.
waiting for word from the state, and then Lynch Dallas obviously also wants to take the lead, since in the state of Iowa, elections are run by the county auditors, so. Is anybody opposed to the 4 years, going back to that, or is everyone in agreement that we want to start the process of bringing forward an ordinance that would get it to the 4-year? Is there anyone that thinks it should stay 2?
I'm for a 4-year.
4-year.
Keeps it the way we thought it was.
It's a pretty big shocker. Was like, well, Mayor, you better sit down. Chad, you 4?
Yeah.
So then, if everybody's okay with that, obviously, again, there's no action for tonight, but knowing that the consensus is 4 years, I'll proceed with continuing to work with Lynch Dallas and the 2 county auditors to figure out, the ordinance itself is not difficult wording, I can do that. But if there's something that, there's going to have to be wording about how we get back to staggered, so before we can present that to the council, we'll want to make sure that not only are we changing it from 2 to 4, but typically, just like when you change from at-large to wards or flip-flop, you have to be clear what you're going to do in that first time. So that'll have to be part of the ordinance.
I have a question about this.
Can you come up to the, can you,
You did a great job explaining a very complicated and foolish act.
thank you.
When the recodification was done, you made it very clear many times that it was involved you. The recodification was done by our clerk at that time. Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
She was tasked with the assignment on behalf of the council
Right.
to
Which
go
is-
through the book.
That's fine. That's,
Yep.
that's.
That was
what
kinda her-
hired staffs to do. As you pointed out, it would be difficult for all these part-time people to look at all that stuff.
I
Although
agree.
that is what we elect them for. Okay, one, why would the term have been changed to begin with? There was no,
So it wasn't, so
was it just a clerical error?
no, so when they start the process, they take your old book, and
Yeah.
what ECA is telling me is that they come up with a template.
Okay.
And the template that they handed the staff, which could have other things that aren't right either, like, or just not right according to what Cascade wants, there's a template. It's just a scratch pad to start with. And then you as staff have to say, oh, wait, we have 4. Change the 2 to 4.
She used the template and what we originally had.
The ECIA handed the staff a template that said 2, and the staff never read, wait a minute, we are supposed to say 4. So the template that they were handed, like, here's the book, go home and read it, and figure out what we should change for Cascade, I emailed ECIA because I'm like, seems a lot different than missing a 2 versus changing it from 4 to 2. She did not change it, she
My question is,
missed.
why would they use a template if they
That's what
already-
I would agree with you.
Yeah, I don't understand why use a template if you've already got code for how many years?
Well, they're not using our template. They
I
have.
understand that,
Right.
but I'm talking about your staff person. Why would they even, okay, we've got this stuff already taken care of. If there's any changes, then we'll do that. And furthermore, if they did add things in, wouldn't they just highlight, make a copy of that, highlight that, and then give it to the council to look over? I mean, to me, you got 2 things going on. One, your staff obviously somehow or another made a mistake on that. And must be a lot more from what you're pointing out, that you're finding all kinds of mistake that the staff, that staff person did. Two, that person could have helped things out a lot, since we don't elect the staff person, but we elect the council people that hire the staff people to just, I would have thought the council might have been somewhat interested, okay, what, if this is done every 4 or 5 years? Well, part of my job, I know it doesn't pay, is to look over what this new
I think that
recodification does, and they would do that. Evidently, the way I understand it from you is, it'd be a lot to expect these people to look at it, is tantamount to, I guess they probably didn't even look at it. I don't know if that's true or not. I can't say council people here that were at the time, they're here, or those that were here before them at that time, choose to ignore to look at it. I would think that would be part of your job.
I think, this is my interpretation, again, I wasn't here. I think that they were handed a book, and then the staff gave a list, because they know, like, you're hunting and pecking. Like, unless you have the old book and the new book next to you, like, you literally, it could be
And why
one word.
couldn't that have happened?
Well, I'm just saying, I think what they got was a list of 20 things. Like, we're telling you what we changed was A, B, C, D. And it didn't make the list because clearly they didn't notice. Like, it's other simple things. Like, I'll give you one other example. I told you about the stormwater. The other one was, it said in the garbage code that you as residents are supposed to provide your own garbage container. That's not what we do, right? Like, we give you a toter and you take it to the curb. But when they adopted it, that's something that we've changed, not an earth-shattering thing, but you read it and say, like, wait, it says you're supposed to John Noonan go buy your thing at Cascade Lumber and then put it out at the curb with no wheels or whatever you want to use, or put your bags out there, and it didn't, that was an incorrect thing. So their job would have been to read through there and say, this is not what we do in Cascade, because they didn't start.
They as in the staff person.
The staff, yeah.
What about, would have been the staff person be, you're saying the clerk or the, I would think it'd be a job of the clerk and the administrator to work on together.
All I understand.
How was it parceled out to just the clerk?
So my understanding is that because there was a lot of people that wanted to work, not a lot, but there's only a few people here, but one of the people that wanted to work from home, that was a job, they could take the book and go home and read it. And so they handed it to the clerk and said, as a part of your working from home during COVID, because remember, it got adopted in '21, so they were probably working in it 2021, like, that's what you're going to do from home. And so that person was what the council, who they assigned to be in charge of that.
And from that point, it wasn't handed up to the administrator.
I can't speak for Deanna, I don't know.
I'm just curious how it works, because
Yeah.
it seems to me there's an awful lot of stuff overlooked, and this is just one of many.
Okay, so on this particular thing, what I remember of this is this. There was two things going on at the same time. They were recodifying, but they were also trying to make an online version, not the one we have today, but it was like more of a very rudimentary version to put online that they were putting together. And so the way it was understood to me, that I remember it being put to me, is that basically we were taking that, and we already had our book in there, and as I talked through the process with them, it sounded like they were scanning, basically you would scan the current book we have, and then they would recodify it if there were changes into the online version, and then what they submitted to Iowa. What throws the curveball in here is when ECIA apparently gave them these templates to put in, and apparently instead of going from here and then giving them what we already have, they went the other route. They took their templates and they tried to overlap them on top of what we had, and it took away some of the wording and some of the things that were in there. So when we were handed back the books to go through, we were under the understanding and the impression that the book that we originally had, plus what we added, which we got a sheet of what was added from everything we changed for how many years since the last time it went on there, which we reviewed and went through and looked back in the book off of there and said, yep, they're in there, they're good. That's what they said, and if there were any, then we came up and going.
So you're saying the one that got handed back to you was incorrect?
So, no, what I'm saying is we were under the impression that everything in the book that we originally had, which then they recodified, adding in everything that was changed, and then was going to go online. So we were given a list of everything that was changed that should be in the new book that went in there. When they did it, they put their template on it. Instead of copying the old book to the new book, they ran it through this process that had templates for all the different pages and all the different statutes in there, which then changed some of the things that we were not apprised of changing that should have been never changed. So I think when the council got it and we looked through it, we were looking for the changes in the book to see that those were updated, and then they were updated online. We didn't go back and go things that have been there forever, that never been changed. A lot of us probably didn't look back to see
Okay.
a 2 versus a 4. and that's-
So,
that's
totally
how it
screwed
got
up on, obviously not on your end, but it's, to review all that is, still my point is, it has to be looked at. So probably the next time in another, 3 or 4 years?
Well, actually, we don't do that anymore. So my recommendation to the council when I came, because again, when Mike said we used to have a paper book before 21, and then they took everything and put it into one big PDF. And then this one file was online. So at
Which
least
is
you could
not
go
uncommon.
find the code. But when you go to these American legal companies, which I recommended and the council voted to go with, it's called the codification company. So when you go out there now, not only can you search it and every chapter is separate, but every time that, like tonight, we just adopted these 2 noise ordinances. So I send a thing to the paper that says, hey, this is our new code. Kathy, as clerk's responsibility is to send that new code to American Legal. And then immediately, within like a week of us adopting it, the new code goes online, and so you're recodifying
So
every day.
fresh. It's
Yes.
not something you're wearing.
So
every
there's
5
none of
years.
this 5-year
Makes
stuff
sense.
anymore. So
Totally
on top of
makes
it being awesomely searchable for the officers or staff, like you just go look, citizens can go look, so it's fabulous. But it's none of this 5-year book where you're trying to remember what you did 4 years and 10 months ago and adding it to a book. You're just always,
It's like the old encyclopedias used to come out with an annual.
yeah.
You would add to it. One other quick thing, instead of worrying about the 2 and the 5-year, or 4-year, excuse me, terms, why don't you guys just draw straws?
I don't know if we can legally, John. That's the thing.
Check into it, because it'd be a lot simpler. A lot of people would love to be able to vote for everybody all at one time. But if you want your 2 and your 4, it happens. And I don't think it's
Well, I think
be
there'll always
difficult,
be
plus
4
you're not
instead
gonna
of
be, you're.
One time.
I know you want 4. I know you want 4.
One time, yeah.
Okay, I understand that. But if they're not gonna let you, you know,
I don't know. I mean, I'll certainly, it's a good question. Any other questions?
you.
Otherwise, we'll proceed with 4-year direction for everybody.
Number 15, update on Oak Hill storm sewer.
So I think I've kept the council apprised, but we'll talk about that. There is stormwater, obviously. The streets up in Oak Hill are Mulberry on the west end, then we go to Jack Oak, White Oak, Redwood. And in 3 sections between all those roads are backyard stormwater easements where we installed, the developer, that then was taken over by the city, that there was stormwater pipes installed in those backyards. The reason that this issue started was because there was a mailbox on the curve there at Mulberry, and there was a sinkhole that was beginning kind of an erosion underneath the east side of the mailbox concrete pad. Our staff went out there to look at it, took our contractors, gravel, grading, and excavating came out with us, and we determined that some of that undermining was being done by a failure in the stormwater. We spoke to the neighbors, they had gotten spoke to in that area. We had to move the mailboxes out of the way, which were moved then a little bit around the corner to the west. And as we began digging, the problem became much bigger than we thought it was. The stormwater pipe was 20 feet deep at its deepest place down there, which is very atypical. Typically, stormwater would be buried around a 4-foot, certainly beyond the depth for frost to affect it. But it was 20 feet deep, which created a very large hole. It was a plastic 36-inch pipe. And typically, when you install that pipe, you're going to install rock around it so that as you have your pipe, rock is at the elevation of the pipe, which then creates basically a floor to protect it from crushing. So televising it before they actually went in, and I think I had sent all of you a picture, but the pipe basically had a crack along the top, which then started to cave in on the top and flattened completely like a pancake where I think Brad Gravel had seen a tennis ball in one of the drains that had gone down there, and you couldn't even get the tennis ball through the smashed, which previously was a 36-inch pipe. So we did what we could, kind of had to go incrementally. As everybody knows, when you do things underground, you're going to continue to go. It's 20-foot sections. So we started right at the intersection, proceeded south, and had to do just about 5 pieces of pipe, which got to about 100 feet. Very disruptive to the backyard neighbors there. We were lucky because on the west side of that easement, there were no houses, which allowed us to have a much bigger surface area to be able to move that dirt. Then when we also had to take a pause because Macokota Valley, who has the power out there, had to come out and relocate some boxes along with Cascade Communications before we could carry on. So there was like a 2-day, actually I think a 4-day break because they don't work on Fridays, and we figured this out on Thursday. We then proceeded to the north after they got that part of it buttoned up. And then if you proceed north of Mulberry, you go straight to the north about 100 more feet to a storm structure that then takes an angle off to the northwest and goes to the pond out there. So when that was evaluated, we knew that we needed to replace about 100 more feet, which took us from the north side of our right-of-way line. So thankfully, we didn't have to mess with, there's water on that side of the road. We didn't have to mess with that. But we were able to go all the way to the structure, and then the structure to the pond seemed to still be intact. So that's, we don't have a bill yet from Gravels. I would guess that when we get it, it'll be somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000, which is obviously a pretty big chunk of our stormwater budget. They were out there for, I think, a solid 5 or 6 work days. So we have that. When the mayor and I discussed it, a couple more agenda items down, we'll be asking the council if you would like to hire Gravel to come back and then televise the pipes that are between Jack Oak and White Oak, and then between White Oak and Red Oak. In looking at the plans that we've looked at, we don't think they're as deep, so if there is any failures, the holes will not be like they are. They seem to be around that 4-foot to 5-foot depth. And again, there's some expense, probably at about $250 an hour. We're hoping that maybe we could get it done in a 10-hour day. Some of it depends on if they get hung up or not. And the kind of camera that they have doesn't easily move in those big pipes. They're meant for smaller, more sanitary sewer pipes. So I don't know if there's any questions about that. We obviously needed to get that fixed based on what we found. Hopefully it will not have as much failure in the east to eastern north-south structures. But if there's any questions, otherwise, again, when we get a little further down, we'll be asking you if you would like to televise that now or just wait and see what happens.
My backyard is in between Redwood and White Oak, and I went out and found, I actually have one of the drain entry points in the back corner of my yard, and I can confirm it's about 4 feet down, so.
Which again, the depth of the pipe doesn't impact the televising. It obviously impacts if we ever had to dig it up. That hole was ginormous.
So by televising, you're just looking to see if there's damage.
More failure. So they'll be looking up at the top. The main thing we'll be looking at is any sort of crack on the top of the pipe, which is then creating that concave crushing. But again, because it's not so deep, the likelihood of that happening, to have 20 feet of dirt on top of a plastic pipe versus 4 feet, there's a lot more chance of it being okay.
Do we require SUDAS specifications when these stormwater are being built?
So again, this is long before my time. I believe this was installed somewhere around 2004. So the only thing that we've done new when I've been here was up on the top of the hill, and yes, would be the answer to your question. We do expect our specs to be SUDAS, so we have, we call out the certain kinds of drains. We're looking at pipe size. I think most of what we've installed now is concrete pipe, which obviously is the staff's preference. There's lots of good stories about who put it in and are they living still, or are they not? Who was it?
Well, the reason I ask
But I don't know that.
Yeah, the reason I ask is just going through their specifications. There's no vinyl, polyethylene pipe that are to be used in the right-of-way.
Right.
In
Are you looking at current SUDAS?
Yeah.
So again, so there's a couple things. I've been asked, I got a lot of phone calls saying like, what are you doing? And how is this the city's fault? And why should the city have to pay? But again, for council members who don't go through this process, what happens when you have a subdivision is we come forward, a developer will come to us and say, hey, I want to build Oak Hill, I want to build on top of the park, I want to build Clawdaw, whatever it is, and we have rules, and then in this case, Jake, it wouldn't have been Jake at the time, but current today would be Jake at MSA. We're going back and forth with their engineers to get that approved. And then we give our blessing to what they're going to install. And then we have some responsibility to be keeping an eye on things, I think there's some debate as to who was watching what back in those days. Again, I'm not going to be the one to judge that, but I can say from staff that there wasn't a strong element of inspections, and there wasn't somebody there on a regular basis. So there's that. But then where I've had these debates with some of the residents out there when they've called is that there comes a point when a subdivision is submitted, like it's done. You have a performance bond which says that you have to perform and do the work that you're doing. And then you have a maintenance bond. And the maintenance bond is once you've finished the subdivision, now they have a bond. I believe our maintenance bond requirement is 2 years. And what happens, like, we haven't done this yet because they're not done up on the hill since I've been here, but there's an actual resolution that your city engineer will go and inspect that and say, it's done to our specs. Some of it might have been covered up and they didn't see it or not. They're not there full-time. But when they come to you and they'll submit a letter to you saying that this subdivision's done, this phase of the subdivision is done, and then you vote to do what's called accepting it as public improvements. So it goes from the developer's road and pipe, water, sewer, storms, catch basins, to now being owned by the city. And so the time that you would have had any ability to go back and say yes or no, should you have done something different, would have been, number one, when it was being installed, or number two, when you accepted it as public improvements. And you even do that as a process, like we did that in the alley when I first came here. You did the alley by the guy's shop. Like, you finish a project, and the mayor knows this from working at the county, like, you say, okay, you finished the, even if it's reconstruction, and now we accept that you did it properly. And so people have said that we should talk to the developer about that. I don't think that you have any recourse to say that there is. Now, I have talked to Mike out there. We've had some conversations about some of the structures that when I see what the storm sewer, the inlets, which are like the things that Megan's talking about in her backyard, when I look at the specs that I was provided, again, they're 20 years old, it doesn't look like the top. There's like a, I call it an oven rack type structure on there. It looks like it should be concrete with a beehive type cover that would allow, if the earth was properly brought to the top of that structure, it should also be providing as an inlet to be able to bring water in. But when you look at the one that at least I looked at closest to this area, you know, there's a big gap. It's like a concrete wall that no water's obviously getting into it. So I would assume we had SUDAS back then. We would have to say, number one, what was the SUDAS back then? But regardless, if that was the expectation, someone allowed that to go through and get adopted as now public improvements. So my position, without taking it any further, would be that it's our responsibility and that we accepted it at some point in the 2006, 7, 8, something like that.
We had some problems with catch basins 2 years ago as well. They were probably only 25 years old. Now we're working with things that are 20-some years old.
I think what's challenging in
And in the meantime, we have parts of the city that we need to be,
fixed.
I mean, we have to be a lot more diligent on these developments, apparently.
So one of the things I can say, attesting to working in most of my career in small towns, is that we all want developers to do good things in our communities. And when you're doing them in small communities, they're not cheap, right? And they, like, if you're buying a lot here or you're buying a lot in a more expensive community, you have to break even to some point, and the developer still has to make money. And so when you see subdivisions that don't have sidewalks, it's because it's a savings of money. If you were to pay a full-time inspector, and like when I was in Eldridge, we charged we had Mel Foster was our biggest developer, and we were more than happy at the price that they could sell a lot for to be able to have an inspector who watched that. Now, to give you a concept of the highway that we're working on right now, we have MSA, and if you remember, we approved a $190,000 contract for Cody from MSA to sit there every day and watch that project. So there's not going to be anything missed on that project. But if you were to say that we're going to do that in Oak Hill or Claudia or up there, like, you're going to write those developments right out of the business, and then you're not going to have Oak Hill, and you're not going to have Claudia Court, because in a small town, you're working with these people to try and make a dollar on those subdivisions. And that's kind of where we're at right now. When you look at the price of one of the developments that the lumberyard wanted to do, their break-even point to sell a lot is $80,000. And I don't know who's going to buy a lot for $80,000, and that's a break-even point. That's not the lumberyard making any money. And so there's a challenge between well-intended past city councils who didn't put the screws to like, we're gonna be there every day and you're gonna have to charge them. Like, I don't subscribe to people purposely let a developer not do it well. I don't think anybody here would have done that. But then there's a balance to how much you inspect and what's the cost of it, and you have a small crew. You know, Marty, Phil were probably, at least Marty was here back then, like, even if he could be there, he can't be there all day watching that. And so you balance all the pros and cons and what people can do, and that's kind of where you're at.
I understand that, but it's getting to be
We
very
need to watch.
expensive to the city
When that
when
shows up.
this continues occurring, and we have, especially on projects that are
It's
less
a-
than 25 years old.
Yes, it's a challenge. I mean, we just replaced those ones up on Claire or Cork, and you remember, like, some of the issues there was that the way they're installed on that kind of an incline needs to be done differently than on a flat surface. So what we saw was that those storm systems were just basically slipping down the hill. And so I think, did we spend last summer $25,000 or so just to put in a couple new structures, so.
Pat, you have some?
I do. Was there ever an engineering, have you found an engineering report on the original development?
Yep, I have.
Does it show that pipe at 21 feet in dirt?
No,
What does it show it at?
I don't remember. I gave it mainly to gravel first so that they could be ready, so.
But, and so, the engineer didn't show that. Our engineer that looked at it didn't see it because it wasn't 21 feet in the dirt. So the only two people that knew what was going on is the guy on the excavator and maybe the developer, or maybe not, I don't know. Good thing Mark's here. Mark, would you put a rubber pipe 21 feet down with no gravel?
It's not recommended.
It's not recommended. And the other thing, if you camera and look, can we tell from the ground electronically how deep those, there's no tracer, there's no wire, like, you know, a telephone
no.
line, you could tell where it's at, you know, all that. So we just hope. And the other thing is that I'm thinking, for sure, any lot that isn't developed should definitely be looked at by a camera, because if that problem was 400 feet further south,
In a new
we'd have had a
road.
pile of dirt in 4 yards, and we only got a 20-foot easement, so it'd have been hauling dirt, out and in. So I'm thinking any lots that aren't developed, those are the ones, you know, those are the ones to me that could be fixed. If you go and find a problem in the back of 4 people's lots with a 20-foot easement, God forbid it's 21 feet in the ground, there's no way you're gonna get it done. Unless they cooperate and say, cover my whole backyard and then put it back. You know, and that's basically what happened up there. The lot owner allowed the city to put a mountain of dirt in his lot. But if that had been your backyard, it would have been a whole different,
Well, there would have been a lot more price to moving that dirt.
Surprisingly, though, I'm just saying, the engineer engineered it. Somebody, one of our engineers looked at it. And the pipe isn't where it belongs.
I think you had, when you and I talked, you had another reason why you thought it could have been deeper than it was supposed to be.
There could have been fill brought in. For instance, most of that ground up there has been moved 3 times over the last 35 years. So let's pretend it went in. Except, I don't think that happened because this is the guy's backyard and it's 21 feet down. His front yard is 10 feet taller than that. So I thought maybe they just covered a 4-foot pipe with 16 foot of dirt to landscape. I don't think that happened, but when you get an engineer to engineer it, an engineer to look at it, and the contractor and the developer to follow the plan, it almost shouldn't be wrong,
You would hope not.
unless somebody made a conscious decision. And why that thing was 21 feet down, nobody knows. Anyway, I'm just saying, if we're paying engineers and we pay them handily, developer pays them handily, then, you know, where's their, and again,
Obligation.
try to back up and find out how the hog died last year. That ain't gonna happen. But 21 feet, whoever was on that excavator was wrong. And possibly if the developer knew it was 21 feet, he's wrong. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And as far as accepting it, if you bought a house, 5 years later, you took your drywall off and found that you only put every other stud in. Whether you paid for the house or not, you'd be on somebody.
because you didn't see it. I didn't see it, and the contractor said, you didn't see it, and you paid for it. I mean, that's exactly what we're saying. And that's, if it hadn't been the sinkhole, but I'm worried about the other vacant lots, more worried about the developed lots, which are gonna be almost impossible to fix. But I think the camera idea is an excellent idea. I think they ought to scope everything up there, look at it. I don't care which, even not necessarily just these streets, but any place there's a potential, that pipe being more than 4 feet in the dirt, the camera should go through it. And if that costs more, because now we know what the other end costs. So, I mean, you know, looking at it with a camera, and they do that all the time, all over the world, you know, it's not a big whoop to run the camera down through a pipe. But, and then, again, heaven forbid, problem. And then we'll all start over again. So, but anyway, I think the engineers, first engineer did his job. He engineered it correctly. Second engineer looked at it and said, that's correct. And then it was done.
I think when that Mulberry was put in, they put in that southern portion, and it wasn't a through street at that time. They put that pipe in all the way to the retention pond, and then when they came all the way through with Mulberry, they put the fill on top to continue the street
Yeah.
to hook up to.
Because now
Oak Hill.
someone said the
Yeah.
pipe underneath the street had gravel around.
It did.
So you have no gravel,
Gravel.
no gravel. So somebody changed something, but, and again, the city, I don't doubt that we're gonna end up paying for it, but, and I don't know what the answer is. Have somebody look in the hole all day? I don't know. But,
It's not, it's a balance. That's why I say it's not easy.
but in reality, I understand the city workers are not engineers. We could pay one of them a lot less than $190,000. Now, they have no expertise, but let's see, 4 feet or 21 feet, I wonder how that works.
I think one of the challenges, though, is again, like,
Yeah.
people, you know, we sit here and talk about, like, who appears to be mean, or
Yeah.
who's enforcing rules, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've heard from city staff that they did talk about those things, but then they have to come forward to elected officials who balance a developer saying, like, hey, we're trying to get this done to still make a couple bucks, and those things get balanced in the reality of every day.
You know, okay, but I'm just saying, the guy running the excavator knew that was wrong.
I wasn't here.
So, but they did it anyway, so.
I'll be brief. First of all, I want to preface this with, I have not casted any dispersions on any developers, period. So I want that clear. Being part owner of a company that isn't developing, I'm just here to state some facts. And the facts are this: 20 years, 10 to 15 years before Oak Hill was built, Claudia Court, you brought up several times. When Claudia Court was built, the council required, the city manager enforced us at that time to have all the work inspected on a practically daily basis. Dave Gudenkauf was on the council at that time. You had Randy Lansing as your city manager. So over the period of a year or so, whatever it took to put the 2 streets in, to get plumbed in, we had inspection daily. Now, I don't know what you had back then. That's whatever. But when you talk about, well, it gets expensive to have people do stuff like that, I can tell you what I know our experience was. I don't know what their experience was. I don't think any developer in their right mind, and that's pretty much most of the developers you have in this town, if one's in their right mind, are going to try to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. That's why I'm saying I'm not casting aspersions. But instead of standing around here, gee, I don't know what happened because we didn't have anybody out there, well, it'll be real expensive to do that. We did, and we followed through on it. Matter of fact, we had a break in, I believe it was the water line, and we worked it out with the subcontractor. We had discussion whose fault was who, and we checked it out. We actually put a camera through it, and back in the 1990s, that was relatively new technology, and discovered it was in the installation. So
I've
got
heard that
fixed.
story.
Yeah, so long or the short of it, we did it the way I would assume you're still doing it today. And yes, it does make it expensive. $80,000 is a lot for those lots up there. Then you got to, the thing is, what bugs me about this whole thing is, we did that because we were asked to do it and told to do it, and we did it. Not too many years prior to that, there was another, and maybe this town will know that, a development was put in, and a lot of things were looked over. Nobody's kidding each other around here. A lot of stuff happened that, well, it's okay. So I think it was a good reaction to it for us, and I would have thought that would have stayed in place, and I would assume that it will still be in place. I was also part of a company that had wanted to put in a driveway and a parking lot. We had to pay for engineering to have it done, turned it in. It wasn't allowed because it wasn't your engineering. So then we had to hire it again. So I understand the layers and the expense. Believe me, anybody that's in business, especially in construction in this town, realize there's a two-handed way of things that are being done. So the city, this is another one of the, oops, I wonder how we missed that one. Had our eyes off the ball again. So this is the kind of stuff I think that foments the people that came down here at the beginning of this meeting wondering what the hell's going on. Why do we have to feel like this, be afraid to come down and talk? So these are things, part of what Dagwood said earlier, need to be fixed. And hopefully all that's taken serious. And at the same time too, try to be friendly to your, as friendly as you can without being, how should I put it, look like you're giving these guys a break and somebody else one not a break. So, thank you.
Thank you. Number 16, update on well number 6 motor and pump.
So everybody knows that our well 6 up by the water tower had broke. It's, I think, almost been about a year, but we're happy to report that that is completely repaired now. The motor and pump are now reinstalled. It took about a number of days for Marty to be able to test the water, get all of the new chemicals through there. But I believe, Marty, we are back online. So well 6 is back online. Again, I think we haven't gotten the final bill that I've seen, at least. It was, I think, estimated to be $180,000 fixed. And our insurance check minus our deductible was $112 of it. So again, a budgeted, non-budgeted item that we will have to deal with in the water department. Any questions?
Number 17, consideration of resolution number 79-24, Board of Adjustment appointment. And was that advertised?
Excuse me?
Was it advertising and posted?
Was, but that was when I wasn't told that you were putting it on the agenda, so there's a reposting, because the reason, like, I don't have a problem if the council appoints, it's Phil Lehman that put his name in. To clarify again, when people think I'm being difficult, we advertised, no one came forward. Then, because the Board of Adjustment people went and spoke to other members, I'm assuming, because they asked if we had someone, and I told them that we did not. That's fine that someone came forward. What I believe is most proper is that you then re-advertise and say, hey, just in case someone else wants to be on, they had an opportunity with a new deadline. So what I had said was, I understand we had somebody. My suggestion is that I put an ad out. I was busy the last 2 weeks. I apologize that I didn't do it when Linda first asked me to. And so I did not post it. I posted it over the weekend. And if the council wants to not do that and appoint Phil, then we'll just delete that post off of Facebook. It's up to you. But
I mean, it'd be proper to repost.
me, like if someone comes forward and says, and you know, again, nobody talked to me over the weekend.
Yep.
It was not trying to be difficult. I just think when you're opening it back up, that it seems best to do that. If the council feels that that's not important, that's obviously your decision.
Was it closed?
It had a deadline.
It did have a deadline?
Yes. And so if you remember, like Monica knows, it was in June, we had advertised on one post, we need library people and we need Board of Adjustment people. So library people came forward, nobody did for the board. We meet 2 times a year, so it's not like a high profile, we're meeting every week like you, or every month like you do for library and park. And so I didn't do anything. Those are difficult. We had just filled planning and zoning. And then when Linda asked me, it was like the late 20s of July. I said I would post it. I again apologize that I failed to do that in the busyness of everything else going on. And so when Linda reminded me this weekend, I said I'd be happy to post it. I was up north in Wisconsin. I posted it anyway yesterday, and I put, like what I said was if we wait till the next meeting, then I always try to time it so that like the Wednesday before the packet. So I posted on Facebook, if you're interested, it would be next week Wednesday. Then I'd put it on the agenda. and then it would have been for the 26th. That was my recommendation. That was the back and forth emails that Linda and Clay and the rest of the board were in. I just simply said, I'm not trying to be difficult, I just think that's best practice. And then, I don't know where the mayor and Kathy amended it to put it on there, so that's up to the council. There's no resolution that I know of anybody wrote the resolution. So they do have a quorum for their 4 people. They've, you know, it is because Whiskers passed away. I think we've had one other meeting since he passed. So the choices I would say are, it's on the agenda, you can legally do it. If you do it, I'll delete the post. If you think it's most proper, which was my recommendation, to leave the post out there and wait one more meeting. When I set up these meetings, to be clear also, like, we only had 5 people for my whole first 18 months here out of 7 for planning and zoning. I'm very respectful of having a quorum because we put ads in the paper. So my first step is always sending out a thing saying, hey, this is what we're doing, and then I never put an ad or confirm a date until I know that we have a quorum. And so all 4 members of the board said they would come, and then I also have a planning and zoning meeting on Thursday, or maybe it's flip-flop, it must be Thursday is planning and zoning. So I'm always very respectful of making sure that they have that quorum, and not hampering that we're gonna put an ad and I just flippantly put that date out there. So your choices are adopt it, put Phil on there, or as I had posted, not knowing, I posted it before this agenda came out. My suggestion was to wait 2 more weeks, but it doesn't, it's up to the council.
And you had no one apply the first round?
No.
You have a meeting coming up soon?
We have a meeting this week, but when we set up that meeting, there were 4 people on it, and all 4 people said they could be there. So there will not be a quorum issue or a vote issue.
That's relevant.
Again, I have no problem which way the council goes. I just, from a best practice, seems like it's wise to post it.
It's not like somebody's jumping in hoops and jumping in and going after it. I mean, we got one person that's interested over since middle of June, so I think we snatch them up and put them on the board. I mean, unless somebody knows somebody that wants to do it, but I mean, I don't think people are beating down the door to be on that, you know, board. I mean, it's met, you know. So.
I think Phil would be great on the Board of Adjustments. So we're saying we're not gonna follow our correct process?
No, she says it's legal to do it this way, right?
Well, it's best, it's what you do. So let me give you an example when you say nobody's beating down your door. Monica had a sudden vacancy on the library board. And she knew somebody that she was gonna go and ask, just like that happened here. And it's a person that's involved in a lot of stuff. And then we put the ad out. And a nice young lady came forward that the mayor met and recommended, who's never been involved in city government. But we gave her an opportunity because we put an ad out there, and just instead of taking somebody that's involved, and I'm not saying anything about that person who you didn't appoint, or Phil, but sometimes we have those, like, we'll just talk to the people that we know, and we don't always encourage new people to get involved. And that was just literally last month that the mayor came forward with that person, and he already knew about the first person. And then I said, hey, you know, sometimes we want to encourage new people, because otherwise it's like, oh, we never give new people. And there might not be anybody else, but yeah, you can do it either way.
I mean, you could repost it just to be more proper.
It's posted, so it's out there.
Okay.
Which, it's next week is the deadline. And then, as we always do, if there's more than, well, either way, I inform the mayor of who comes forward. And then typically, if the mayor has more than one, he'll kind of reach out. At the end of the day, it's the council's decision, but it's the mayor's recommendation, especially if we have more than one. So, as the mayor can attest, he'll go meet with those people, or he didn't know the young lady, so. And if you decide to go ahead, then I'll just delete the post. Are you okay? I feel like you should make the recommendation of what you would prefer to the council, since it's your.
I mean, I think it would make sense just to honor the posting and go from there for the next meeting.
And then put it on in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Is everybody okay with that?
Didn't you just create a situation where you released who the anonymous person was to be on this board, and now we're putting him subject to a week of somebody that may not?
We're not doing anything tonight, I'm taking sending my offer, okay? You guys are all in control.
Create an opposition for the person.
Yeah, I'm done, okay? You guys are all in control.
I mean, whatever the group wants to do.
Without now posted. Good luck. Department.
You started, Steve, you finish it.
I mean, he'd be,
I agree.
Phil would be
I
excellent.
just said that 30 seconds ago, and I got dissed over there. I think Phil's gonna be great. Nobody's beating down the door to do this job.
no.
I mean, I don't think another week, somebody's gonna come flying through the door and wanna do it,
There's no one now.
you know? I mean, it's
He's
been
out.
vacant for 8 weeks now. Or no, for how many years now, whatever it is, or since Whiskers died. So, I mean, nobody beat down the door after he died to get on it.
No.
So I think we nominate,
Well, he doesn't want it.
you don't want it now?
He's done.
Okay, sorry about that, buddy.
I don't understand why you're bringing your hands over this. But several weeks ago, you made a change to zoning on setbacks without even having any opinion from the zoning board. You practically did, the only thing you had to do was throw the holy water on it by having readings later on. Then you found out you'd have enough people competing to actually do it.
Mr. Mayor?
So I mean,
Yep.
why, this is the stuff that.
Come to the podium, John.
Yeah.
Can I address that? Because again, there's misinformation. In our state code, the body that reviews the zoning code is the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they are required by state law to hold a public hearing. And then we advertise for the city council to hold a public hearing. The Board of Adjustment's place is when you change the code and have a variance or a special exception, they are to review those. But when two members of the Board of Adjustment came and spoke at the Planning and Zoning and suggested that what I was doing was either recommending something illegal or why didn't we discuss it with them, I went back to our city attorney in respect for those two members because I was following city code and bringing in the body who is to do that, just like they're going to do this Thursday when we talk about the fence ordinance. And when I went to the city attorney, he said, as city officials, we follow our rules. And the rules of changing the zoning code are to go before the Planning and Zoning, not the Board of Adjustment. But publicly, I'm chastised for not going to a board that's not by your own city code for many, many years. That's not the process. I went to the body. Bob Moriarty is the chairperson. I go to him, I say, would you like to meet? I send an email to 7 people, and they made a recommendation to this council that wasn't in agreement with the 2 members who spoke. So again, there's this stirring of things, that there's these problems and that I'm not doing things with the boards. But the city code says to go to the Planning and Zoning, and that is who I went to. And then it came to you. And you chose to suspend the rules and adopt. That was about the front porches. So there's.
We went with the recommendation from the
Yes.
zoning board.
But again, like, people get to make these statements that I'm not going to boards, I'm taking over the world, and I went to the board that is legally required to do so. And absolutely, the Board of Adjustment has a process, a part of it, but they do it when someone.
My comments are not directed to you, it's directed at the council.
But the council followed the rules, John.
Did they?
Yes,
Did they?
yes.
Yeah, the zoning board was the one in charge of it, and we went with what the zoning board
Right, so you
said.
made the change, but the zoning board.
We didn't make any change. The zoning board made.
No, they were recommended to the
Yeah,
council.
to the yeah, we made the change, you're right. But it's what that board wanted, that's their
That's what I'm
position to
saying.
do.
It seemed like it was out of
Because
step.
we go with the board, and I always lean that way. If the board of zoning says that they want this change for zoning, then generally we go that way. If it's a park board or zoning board, then generally, unless there is some blatant thing that says that they missed or something that it should go back to them or go through, but generally when they recommend, because that's why they're on that board, that's generally the way I go.
So when there's a change or a dip, something out of what's normal, for instance.
Well, I mean, unless it was something that you looked at and went,
Or the adjustment?
what's that?
Are you saying when somebody's gonna do something that's out of what is in the code, like the setback, okay, you go to the zoning board first, or you go to the board of adjustment first?
Well, whoever is in that would be lined up with that legally. I think in this case it was the zoning board.
Well, what it is, John, is that
My question again is, if I'm out of, I wanna be a little closer to the curb, who do I go to first?
well, if you come
That's what I'm
to,
asking.
it depends, because if you come to me,
What do you mean it depends?
because what we did was.
I'm not talking about this instance, I'm talking about something that's happened in the past and something that could happen in the future. If
Okay.
I want to build 3 feet closer than what the restriction is, who do I go to first?
Come down and get a building permit first. You gotta come down and get a building permit first.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
And then they'll tell you where to go.
Once discovered,
Yeah.
And they'll tell you where to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, right, and that's the example I'm using. Go to the same thing. The city manager said, you know what, I think you're too close, let's take a look at it. I said, fine, what do? Go to Board of Adjustment. Went to the Board of Adjustment, they said, you're too close, made my case, they passed it, done. That's why I'm wondering when I'm hearing that go to the zoning board now, as opposed to Board of Adjustment. That's why I thought the Board of Adjustment existed to make the adjustments, whether something is, and I understand the reason, hardship, or gonna deny it because it's got a problem, safety problem, that sort of matter. And I, not casting opinions on anything there, it's just, and that's why I'm asking. So let's go to the zoning board first, or?
No, and then, and I was talking about the case that she was talking about there.
No, I'm
That
just
was-
talking about-
If you're going here, you come for your
I'm
building
talking
permit,
about
and then they
what
put
does
you
the person
to.
do the next
Right.
time? Because here again, we've got the situation with the people are upset about. One person's told something, the next person gets told something different. And I don't have to listen to them, and the meetings last long enough for you folks and all of us to bring them up. So, I agree, and it's not, like I say, a personal thing, Lisa, it's the entire setup. As citizens, we're asking, what do we do? And sometimes people get pretty hard when they're at these meetings. So,
John, you have to step up to the podium because the public cannot hear you. So anybody that's going to make a comment from the audience from this forth, or from this time forth, if you have to step up here. Okay? Please do that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I just got a text message.
Do you want me to repeat that? I don't.
No.
You're good, John.
Number 18, consideration to proceed to accept additional Oak Hill Park land for pickleball courts.
Mike, can you put that up on the board, please?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. We really haven't gone up on anything there. So let me
I'm
check.
slacking here.
So, just to be able to show the map, council knows that when we discussed through the park board and the city council where we were going to put pickleball if the funds are raised, we talked about it being along the northern edge of the land that was donated to the city, which is just under 8 acres. Stop there, please. Right, yeah, okay. So the two X's are north of, you can see there, the tree line is where there's existing trees. The red line below my two red X's is the current border of the park. And when the pickleball people were discussing doing their fundraisers, and they were having discussions with Mike Beck, he would prefer to not see those trees removed that are in my tree line words there on the green. And if we are to fit the pickleball at all in there, some trees would have to go. In addition, when you look at the road there, based on how kind of curvy the road is and how it comes up to the northwest on the left side of the page, there had been some discussion that we may also have to move the road slightly to the south. Not that it's a heavy, already established road, but it certainly makes more sense to not have to move that. So in the conversations, the pickleball people, Terry and Jan Frazier are here. They were the ones that, and Meshers were here. They met with Mr. Beck, and then I confirmed that to make sure that we had had a conversation. But Mike is willing to donate an additional 100 feet to the north, so that's where those red X's are. So my black arrow is basically what would be the new northern border. I know that they went out there and took some samples, if you would like Terry or Dale to speak to that, but they went out there, kind of made sure that the ground would be good. Mike would be donating that at no cost to the city. To me, it makes sense that we would be able to move them up. It's a more of a rectangular piece. The road can stay where it is, and then the trees don't have to move. I took this to the park board. The park board, although I did not attend the meeting on Monday, I listened to the meeting, and they did recommend that you accept that land. And so before I go through the process of doing paperwork and quitclaim deeds and things like that, I want to make sure that the council is willing to accept that donation. And if you are, it would either be consensus or you can make a motion, and then I would proceed to take care of the paperwork.
What are the dimensions of the court size, Dale?
The courts are roughly 30 by 64.
I mean, the total.
Oh.
So times 4.
Yeah, so about 150 feet wide and 64 feet long.
And the long would be north and south.
Right. And the reason, well, Lisa mentioned the trees. Mike had planted 2 rows of oak trees about 25 years ago, and they're really getting to be nice-looking trees. And for us to go up and tear those trees out, I think is a shame, when all we have to do is move it 100 feet, and we're golden. And he's got trees planted north of this, we'll have those oak trees to the south, we could plant trees on the east side. I mean, it's a perfect location. And if you can get it for nothing, kind of a no-brainer in my book.
And do you just want to explain a little bit when you went up there and just kind of made sure we did a little bit of soil sampling? Obviously, our issue at Oak Hill is how much bedrock there is up there. And as even when we did the playground, you know, you're dealing with a lot of rock immediately under the surface.
That's like where that red X is on the right-hand side of the picture. That's pretty rocky there, and it's only like a foot deep. The dirt and everything else below that is pretty solid rock, they tell me. So with us being able to do this with Mike, we moved it to the west and to the north a little bit.
So it would be more to the
There's
left, west
Yeah,
side.
it'd be not quite in the middle of the 2 X's, but
To get away from the rocky part.
yeah, there's more dirt to the left of that X.
If we can get away from the rock, we can build the courts cheaper because you're not dealing with excavating that rock.
So is anyone on the council opposed to accepting this donation, or do you want me to proceed to work with Mike on the donation?
Nope, works for me. Works for me.
Works for me.
That's good.
Mark?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Number 19, consideration of resolution number 80-24, approval to hire camera evaluation of Oak Hill storm sewer.
Again, I met with Terry and Brad. We don't know exactly how many hours it'll take. Brad thankfully is willing to also go down there in any spaces that he can physically fit his own body. And so we have that to our advantage in addition to the camera. So basically, between the man hours of the a person and the camera, we would be paying $250 an hour. Kind of in our rough estimate, we're hoping that they could get it done in a 10-hour day. And so we'd be looking at somewhere around $2,500, which I would recommend is probably a good investment to make sure that we have information. So if the council is agreeable, I would recommend approval of Resolution 80-24.
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Delaney,
I'll second it.
second by Oliphant, roll call.
Weber.
Nah.
Nay? Okay. Oliphant.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Nah.
Delaney.
Aye.
3-2.
Yep.
Number 20, update on proposed ordinance for 8-foot fence height in C1, M1, and M2 districts.
So this is another situation. The city code currently has a height restriction of 6 feet in the zoning code for any kind of fences. There are numerous 8-foot fences around town, and I was first presented with a business who I think makes sense. I don't think there's any pictures for this one. This is just information. So I have a business who is looking to have a fence permit approved. They currently have an 8-foot fence, and I'm not comfortable approving an 8-foot permit for an 8-foot fence when there is no code that allows for that. So I have a planning and zoning commission meeting scheduled, and this is my draft ordinance that would basically allow, like for residential, you would still remain at a 6-foot fence height restriction, and then in the 2 manufacturing districts and C2, which is the highway district, highway commercial district, that if this were to pass, and there'll be a public hearing at the council at the next meeting, but I'm at least looking for input from you if you concur that it would make sense to have that 8-foot restriction lifted, or the 6-foot being lifted and increased to 8 feet.
Is that vision obscuring, or no?
Because you still, when you see in there that it says, Mayor, see the number 12
Yeah.
paragraph, and it says that it still refers to section 165-12 sub 1, that's the vision triangle. And so if they're on a corner and there's a vision triangle issue, they still have to comply with that, so it's not, doesn't have any restrictions there. Is anybody opposed to that?
No.
All right, so we'll carry on, it'll be here at the next meeting for your public hearing.
Number 21, discussion on Buchanan Street Southwest right-of-way vacation between Fifth Avenue and Riverview Drive and Langworthy and Thomas Streets.
Can you go to the Buchanan map? I don't know if that's the second page. So Cindy and Paul are here. I'll kind of explain it, and then they're here if you want to look at it. So, again, a problem from before I was even born. No. So Buchanan Street. There's a map.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's right there.
Gotcha.
Oh, oh, oh.
You're saying up, I'm going up.
Yeah,
from
sorry.
here.
I don't know. Okay, so this is Fifth Avenue, Highway 136 is over here, and this is Buchanan, our new busy road for the summer. Paul and Cindy's mom, Dorothy, this is her property right here. They have a mobile home there. So back in like 1940, the DOT, remember that was Highway 136? And so when it was Highway 136 and they had future plans to expand it, they purchased 39 feet of Dorothy's front yard. Back in around, I don't remember if we saw 1960 or 1990, I don't remember. But the DOT then proceeded to put Highway 136 on Highway 136 where it is now, and therefore Buchanan Street came back to being a local road. And at the time, this land, this 39 feet of frontage, was deeded back to the city. There's also a piece over here, you see this land. I think it's a Mr. Cannon. So that land was deeded to the city. Interestingly enough, when you go on Beacon, in the world of things don't always work out the way they're supposed to, this looks like it's Dorothy's lot. It does not show that this 39 feet, which it is technically by title, is owned by the city. Then over here, when it was deeded to the city, it has that this is owned by the DOT. So I got an email from two attorneys. One had done the title search because Cindy and Paul's mom has an offer to purchase her land and thought that this was her front yard. And when they did the title search, they came back and said, oh, by the way, the 39 feet was never deeded properly and it's owned by the city. So her front yard is 2 feet from her front door, legally. So they asked me to sign a quitclaim deed. And I was like, just a minute. That seems like I'm not just going to sign it over. So I met with their attorneys to try and understand where we were at, and then unfortunately, I think that there was some delay in the information that Cindy and Paul had gotten. They came and met with me last week, and I said that I would try to expedite this as good as I could. They are already past their closing date. But legally, when you go through the process of vacating roads, because it is a dedicated right-of-way, it takes time. And so I have suggested to them that they probably need to go back and counteroffer that this is likely, maybe they can close by October 15th. The buyer is aware of the fact that when the title policy came back, that there is no front yard there. She owns about 2 feet. And I guess before we proceed and for them to have an answer, I don't see why we would, it's obviously again up to the council, but I don't see a need where for that yard that we would retain that. As you go further south, there is the levee, and so we have to retain that land. And then again, I don't know why we would keep the other X on the left-hand side of the page on the west, just south of Fifth Avenue. But it's a process. It costs money to do public hearings. If they don't proceed, they have either a person that doesn't want to buy the land, or they want to pay significantly less because now they have a 2-foot front yard instead of a 41-foot front yard. And so before we go through this process, I at least wanted to have an opportunity for them to hear from the council that at least you felt that that was something we could do. They understand that it's not official until we would hold the public hearing. In your packet, I just put what our ordinance is for vacating and disposing of streets. There's a process, public hearing. We'll have to get an ordinance drafted. Thankfully, they are legal lots. It's technically 4 lots that we would be giving them. She has 100 feet of frontage with 25-foot 4 lots. It's like lot 10, 15, 16, and 21 that we would be deeding over. So we would need to work with the attorneys. The other issue that we have that Marty and I were working on was, you can see that she has 2 driveways. The one that she uses is on the top of the page on the north. When that was right-of-way, like you know what a curb stop is, where if we need to shut off your water, we have access to that because it's always in the right-of-way. That curb stop is way back in what would now become her yard. And so we had 2 options. One was they either have to move the curb stop, which costs thousands of dollars to hire a plumber, and they'd have to move it back so that if we ever had to shut the person off, we don't get accused of trespassing. I think a more reasonable compromise that we met about was that they would hire Mike Weber to create a legal document describing an easement that would give us a permanent easement to the place, which is about 50 feet in, and describe a 10 or 15-foot easement that says, for any purposes of getting to the curb stop, that we would get to that. So instead of just deeding it, and I know that you spoke to Mike So you can work that out with him, obviously, if we proceed, but I would at least like council input before we get through this. Does anybody see an issue? Staff, we're all fine with it. And that we would also have a copper wire, a tracer wire put in there? Is that what you're talking about? Oh, that's right. There's a transformer that would also have to be in the easement for electric. Thank you, Marty. Does anybody see a reason why?
What are we talking about, legal expenses?
I mean, their attorney already drafted the quitclaim deed for me, like he was like, oh, here, sign it. And I was like, stop. So I think that they are willing, Dorothy's attorney is willing to draft those documents, so less for us, but we at least have to have our attorneys review it, so I don't know if that, I mean, if you, the other thing is, we have a code. I don't think it's a code, I think it's a resolution. So what I explained to them is when we're giving up public land, we can't do that for free. And so the way that our policy works is that you take the typical value of the land in that area and you take it by square feet. So we have a piece that is 39 feet by 100 feet or 390 feet. And if we take that, 3,900, 390. And so we looked at that, and I believe, did we come up when you were in my office with $4,000? And so there is a cost to them that they would have to purchase it. Even if you want to be nice and say this was never anything like the public purpose doctrine says, when something's owned by the public, it can't be given to a private person for their gain, and it obviously does make their land more valuable. So there would have to be a discussion about that. And then to answer your question, Bill, I can't promise what that legal bill would be, but it would, at least I would think, be a few hours of legal time on our side, which we pay $250, $300 an hour, so. According to the way they looked at the title policy, you know, in their minds, it was given to the city and then you would give it back. But there's nothing that says just because the city got it, you have to give it back.
So in both of those X's, the county took the land from them for the 136.
The state.
The state
The state took it.
took
And
a
then
wider
when they
swath.
decided not to, instead of giving it back to the people who own the property, they deeded it to the city.
If it's next to a road, there, I would think, I believe best practice for the DOT would always be you'd give it back to the city so that it stays roadway. And then you would have to make a decision, you know, again, this was decades ago.
Doesn't really make sense.
I spend a lot of time talking about stuff like this. And these are the kinds of things that they just take time, you know. So maybe if Cindy and Paul, you want to come up, you are requesting on behalf of your mother that the city consider, correct? I just said, you are on behalf of your mom requesting
Right,
that the
yep,
city
I'm
consider giving
representing
that. That's your preference.
Yeah. Yep.
And again, we still have to go through a public hearing, but I don't want them to be negotiating and asking someone to wait and then have you guys be like, hey, we really think we should keep this.
I don't think we should keep it.
No, I don't think we should keep it either.
What precedent does that set for anybody else that
Well,
has
this
the
is
same-
part of, to me, this is part of that lot. I mean, it should have never been.
It looks like it would be.
It's no different than if Randy had the same thing in his, but his house is on his. I don't,
Yeah, back when the DOT took it, nothing was impacted on his. Weird, but not. So they must have thought they were
What
going to
about
widen it or
what about
curve it?
the Merifelt side? I don't understand.
Is that on the west?
Yeah, why, that was never.
Minus me.
Directly below it there.
Right, minus me asking for more people to do more homework, I confirmed that their front yards are theirs. But it's weird because when your brother was here and we were looking at it, he's like, well, he can see, you know, he's like the god of these things. Like,
Mhm.
we just call him in as a consultant. And he said, you know, it is deeded to the city, but somehow on Beacon, it still shows the DOT. So even those kinds of things, like you can't just trust what Beacon says. You still have to do, and obviously Mike has the talent to be able to sift through all these things. So he came in, you know, I confirmed with him he's a great asset to us to be able to answer those questions, and he basically confirmed what I'm saying, that it came a time where the landowners, the DOT purchased it, they decided not to go on the highway there, they gave it back to the city, and then we sat. And obviously, south of there, we need to keep it on the east side of the road because that's where the levee is, the dike, whatever we call it.
It's the front yard of somebody's lot, it's not a street, you know, it's not. Yeah, who's been paying taxes on it?
They have.
She's been paying taxes on it.
Then that's, there
The lots
you
that
go.
are in the right of way.
There you go, done.
And cutting the grass.
So that's where I kind of thought, like, I don't think that we can have them pay nothing, but I think that, you know, and I'm going to make sure that we connect with the county. I know that what we discussed was, I don't think you have much of a chance to go back, but sometimes you can go back a year or two to make corrections, and I don't know what they'd say about this when it's a title error. But I'll certainly help advocate if there's a way for Dorothy to get anything back. But maybe in terms of trying to come up with a reasonable price for them, and then maybe, you know, not charging them the cost of our legal fees, kind of as a compromise to the fact that they had land that they thought was theirs that wasn't.
Right.
So we'll proceed with vacation. So at least you have a good idea, and I would just suggest again that you go back to the buyers.
Buyer.
And try to switch, and I think based on what I can get done and kind of the timeline for public hearings, I think if you change that to like October 15th closing and see if he's agreeable.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yep, sounds fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's weird, that's all good to figure out on the agenda.
And Langworthy and Thomas Streets.
Now, this
One more. So this is over by Delaney's, Ag. And again, we have a lot of streets, like, as a staff, we don't really subscribe to giving up right-of-way. So this is Langworthy Court over here, the cul-de-sac. And back in the day, when this was allowed to be a cul-de-sac, you vacated this right-of-way. That's obviously right where Councilmember Gale lives. So you have one landowner, the Delaney's, that own all of this. They own all of this, and then they own their main lot here. And so you have Langworthy Court that would go through here, and it goes, then this is Dillon, that then stops here and goes down here south of Second Avenue. And then this is Thomas Street, which is their address. So I'm working with them pretty diligently. We obviously have issues with a lot of stuff that's out and about in their yard. It doesn't make the neighbors happy. And this is the situation with the 8-foot fence. And so I would like to be able to work with him. He's trying to basically move everything. So what he wants to do, everybody also knows that he had the damage from the storm, had a lot because there was scavenging people there. So he fenced everything in on a temporary basis. And what he's looking to do is fence in behind these houses here, and then he wanted to come up here. So what he proposed originally was that we would just give him permission to go across our right-of-way. Again, these are not developed right-of-ways, but they are dedicated right-of-ways. And when I talked to the attorneys, we don't exactly think it's a good idea to be giving someone permission to go across our right-of-way and put a fence up, even if we had a key to it. So as we've talked about it from the staff's perspective, we have no utilities in here. And we think that it would probably be wise if we were to look at vacating at least this chunk of Langworthy. It can never go through here because of the cul-de-sac being cut off there. And on this end, it's already abandoned or vacated right of way. And I think that that allows him to try and contain the things. If we switch to the 8-foot fence, he can get his permit for his 8-foot fence. We get a lot of concerns from people here because obviously it's a, you know, technically he's zoned C2 highway, but these are residential, so there's never fun when residential butts up against businesses. You know, it's difficult. He is working on that. He has a permit to me about some hoop buildings in this area that would be able to put more things inside so that it isn't just so much stuff outside. So kind of looking for some input here. I don't think that we'd ever put this road through here. He also asked about Thomas Street, which is why I put the yellow X's there. Kind of looking more for council input, I guess, on that. I don't know that that's the best idea. We definitely have utilities in here. Water is in the road there. I think everything with gas and electric, Matt was looking at that, but that's back here, so it wouldn't be impacted. If we were to consider something on Thomas, I think you would probably only want to look at the southern part of it and make sure that we leave this so that, again, his frontage here of his building is that way. But we're going to do that vacation. If we do anything at the same time, we can do those together. But looking for a little bit of input. Obviously, I have a decent relationship with Jason, going out there and talking to him and trying to get things cleaned up for the sake of him, for the neighbors. He is working on those things. I think he has good intentions to try and get that cleaned up, and the more that we can make it easy and get it fenceable for him, I do think that that kind of balances allowing him to operate, to stay safe, and kind of secure his property down, and then not giving him permission to go across the right-of-way.
What kind of fence is he putting in my backyard?
I don't think there's any fence over there.
vinyl.
Well, you just tore it down today.
Right.
Yeah, so is he gonna put anything there?
Well, unless we abandon the road, he
you can't
can't,
put
because he doesn't
anything.
own on the east
Oh,
side of the road.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get the temporary fence down and get things cleaned up with him. Been out there probably 3 times in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, he doesn't own on your side, in your backyard. But if we were to vacate some of the yellow X's, again, we can't, like where it says DeLong on the top, we have utilities there. So when I met with Phil and Ben and Marty, we'll look, before we get this done, like how far south those utilities go. And make sure, we don't want to give anything up, but maybe it makes sense south of Langworthy to 2nd Avenue there, which would be the southern single yellow X. And then if he owned a little bit, like that's still not right behind your house, but a little bit further
I always
south.
got mine surveyed, so I know where my property
Yeah.
lines are at, so.
Any thoughts?
Well, if he cleans it up, it's great. It's an eyesore right now.
So let's first say, is anybody opposed to the 3 red X's on Langworthy? I think that makes the most sense.
That's fine.
Definitely. close.
Everybody okay? And then, I think probably before we answer anything about Thomas, I think we want to probably have a little more staff investigation, and if we feel comfortable that, like I said, as an overall opinion, staff doesn't want us to give up, we don't want to give up roadways.
Right.
Because you give them up, and then you're like, why the heck did we just give that up? Right, Marty?
Well, this one's, can't get it from either side anyway, so.
Right. I mean, the Langworthy piece is locked by both ends, so it's just, it gives him more ability to fence it in. He feels like it's secure.
Yep.
So we will proceed with the red part, and then depending on what we kind of come up with as staff, we'll decide if we're going to do anything on that south chunk. We will not do the north chunk. Is everybody agreeable to that's what will be presented?
Yep.
Thank you.
Number 22, this is an FYI, City Hall will be closed on Friday, August 16th. And reports, Fred?
I don't have really much other than the paper report that was given in the city council packet. I did want to acknowledge the fire department and EMS for the help for the circus Tuesday night. Started out to be a little bit of a fiasco. We got a lot more people than what we thought for the first performance. And we kind of formulated a plan, and it worked out well. And then we're all ready for the second performance. So I just wanted to acknowledge their help. If it wouldn't have been for them, it would have been tough for like 3 or 4 of us to do. So,
Did good.
yeah, it was, and both performances were packed. So.
Yep.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Nope. Library furniture.
We had the Piggott crew, that's our furniture consultants. They were out one day last week to walk through the library site. We toured them around. I think, Monica, did you come? It was Monica and I? And took them around just to kind of give them a better concept. And I think we discussed that sometime in late August. They're still kind of finalizing the prices, but we'll have a meeting with them. They obviously know, as I explained to you before, our budgeted item, line item for that, and that is their goal to get us to that. So we'll have more information most likely at the first meeting in September with a plan to be able to order the furniture and have it delivered at the beginning of February. We have another library construction meeting tomorrow, but everything's going well. We have our update on kind of what everybody's doing. If you're driving past there, you can see the bricklayers are doing a lot. They're starting to build internal walls, so not that you can necessarily see that as much from the exterior, but when you walk through, the hallway walls and different things are there. The roof is now on, and we'll, I think, start getting windows maybe soon. So it's going well.
Looks like a building. And do you have anything?
I do not have anything, as I feel like everything I've worked on was just discussed on the agenda.
Number 24, public comment. You have a limit of 3 minutes per person, only items on this agenda.
Well, why not, Steve? The food truck down at Oddings is long gone anyway, if anybody wanted to go down and get some Mexican food. Hey, no, I just wanted to come on up. We're 2 hours into this meeting, it's 8 o'clock. And we already lost which would have been a great asset to the community, and he wasn't even brought on board. I've known Phil my entire life. I went to grade school with Phil, grew up with him, went to high school with him. The Lehmans have done such a great job in this community. And we
By
lost
far.
him. We lost him. So unfortunately, he's not back in, but Phil, thank you for at least considering it. So in regards to Dorothy, you can't give her the land, but please look in to the council. Sell it to them for $1. $1. There's been thousands, millions of dollars ran through this city. Sell it to her for $1. Please. Sell it to her for $1. So in regards to following the rules, going back to Phil, following the rules, a couple pork board meetings ago, we voted on buying 3-4 dog poop container holders. And we were going to buy them without any further discussion. That was it. We're buying them. I would just like to have an explanation at the next park board meeting why it came on and was posted to accept donations, because it was not accepted well. So why we're accepting donations for more park or dog poop holders, whatever you want to call them. So for following the rules, it was not okayed and voted on by the park board to accept donations for that. So I just want some explanation at the next park board meeting, so thanks.
Hi, Chantel Orr. I'm a member of the Cascade Community Enhancement Group, and Fred kind of opened the door and got me thinking about the circus, so I just wanted to come up and say we were able to present the fire department and the EMS group tonight with check. They split the money for over $5,200. There's over 1,250 people in attendance. It was very well attended. So I just want to thank anybody that's listening, all of the businesses in town that supported, the businesses that purchased tickets for the circus, and all of the people that came out to support. It was a great fundraiser, and thanks to the fire department and for Fred and Brad for helping park and do everything that needed to be done that day. And I know Marty helped a little bit as well, so thank you all.
Good job.
I just caught a couple of things in the conversations, speaking with Dorothy about that. I want to give a little history perspective on that. Squeak gave us the land behind for the levee. So that's a piece to remember as you're talking about negotiating prices with it, because Dorothy and Squeak did a lot to save our community from the flooding. That's a big thing. And the other point I want to bring up, when you're vacating, it was one of the things on our council that we discussed. You mentioned utilities, but the other key pieces are your ambulance service, your fire, and your police services. You have to think long-term on those roads. You don't want to just give them up, just because of utility. You have to make sure that those accesses for the future, you're not going to impact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this,
Sure, if this is on the agenda. But has anybody else tonight recognized the expertise and the knowledge that Lisa has?
Thank you.
She does a very damn good job, I think. I don't agree with her all the time, but I don't agree with Jan all the time. It's part of life. It's just part of life. She's the boss. We all have bosses, or did. Pay attention. She's very knowledgeable and has done an excellent job. If you've seen the list, the stuff that she has gotten done in the last 2 years she's been here, it'd shock you all. Look it up. Very good. Very impressive, Lisa. Thank you.
thanks, Terry.
Thanks.
At this point, we'll adjourn into closed session, 21.5 LI, to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation, and that individual requests a closed session. For city administrator.
I will need a motion.
We'll come get you.
I make a motion to go into closed session.
Second?
Just a
I'll second.
clarification
Thank you.
on this. This is where people will be allowed to speak to you in closed session. There's no.
After.
No.
Nope.
After.
Wait, I thought you said that people would be invited back in during this.
If
If they ask,
possible.
I thought.
Okay. I want it to be known that people can wait, because they could potentially be asked to come back in, correct?
It reopens, doesn't it? There's open
does.
session after.
No, it's my request for closed.
Right.
So what I was advised was that if we're talking about something and the council's agreeable and I'm agreeable, we can welcome someone into closed.
Okay,
Whether it's
so we
other
can
employees.
welcome people into close.
Right.
Okay.
So if there is someone that wants to speak, they are, probably should let someone know.
We would like to speak.
All right.
So I have a motion and a second. I'm ready for a roll call,
Yeah.
just to close it. That's all I'm going
yes.
for, like, I want to finish this motion.
No, we would call you in.
Okay, so I'm gonna do roll calls, all right?
Yep.
What are we doing here? Hold
I'm
on.
just
Close
roll
in the
calling
meeting, call
for,
for a closed
after the
session.
motion and the second, to close it,
Okay.
right?
We're just going into closed.
Yeah,
Well, just while we're voting, leave them on.
Leave on for
okay.
just a second.
Oliphant,
Aye.
Hush,
Aye.
Gale,
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm turning off Boxcast.
You were just.